Some parts of people will change and some parts of people will not change. This video will show what characteristics may change and what may not. Because I don't know, I remember growing up where people would say that people don't change, people stay the same, etc. Well, there are many findings psychologically, spiritually, in which people will change. First of all, if someone is suffering from a major depressive disorder, they may not be feeling motivated, they may have low energy, they may not enjoy things that they're doing. And so if that's treated, then they may be a little bit more outgoing, more social, etc. So people do change in that regards. People are suffering from a severe anxiety disorder. Sometimes there's severe anxiety where they can't go out to public, where they just get panic attacks. And if that's effectively treated, then they can change for the better to where they can go and socialize and do that stuff. Sometimes people who had severe traumatic episodes, they may isolate, they may get angry, they may get mood swings, they may be hypervigilant. But if that's successfully treated through therapy, then people can change. So those are just some psychiatric conditions in which people can effectively change. There's also spiritual examples. We can look at the life of the prodigal son who took all his inheritance and went off and spent it on like partying and all this stuff. And then he comes back to his father and he's remorseful for what he did. And he says, look, I just want to basically live a good life. I want to be one of your servants. And his father takes him with open arms. We also see a biblical story in the Samaritan woman who meets Jesus at the well. She had 5 husbands at this time. She kind of not unsure of her identity or purpose. And it was through Christ where she found out that she was truly fulfilled and she wasn't really seeking other relationships to fulfill herself anymore. She just sought the relationship with Christ. We also see people change in Saul before he was transformed into St. Paul. Saul was a blasphemer. He persecuted Christians. He was really against the Christian faith. And then he had a transformation where he was transformed into St. Paul, where he'd preach to all over the people in the world. Those are some examples of people that can change. We see it psychiatrically in some psychiatric conditions like depression, anxiety. If people are manic or hypomanic, get those successfully treated, people will change. We also see it spiritually. And spiritually, the term is metanoia or repentance or metanoia, to where people will stop their evil or stop their bad habits and change for something good, change to something positive, constructive for themselves, for society, for God. But there are aspects of people that are thought to not change, and that's more their temperament styles. And so I'll talk about that a little bit further. So there are some temperament styles as seen in just newborns to 6 years old, where it depends on like their activity level, how engaged they are, how people are able to adapt to the situation, their moods, etc. So if you can look and see at this little table here, there's quite a variety of things which are thought to be sort of innate or ingrained in that person's temperament or that persona, or what will later construct into their personality. So these things listed here: activity level, distractibility, adaptability, attention span, intensity, threshold or responsive, quality, mood, rhythmicity, approach and withdrawal. Those are thought, there's a little bit of a continuum, but those are thought to be relatively consistent throughout one's life. And so that was just an example for newborns to 6 years old. There's also thoughts of different temperamental styles and other types of people as well. For example, there's this harm avoidance, there's novelty seeking or seeking something new, there's reward dependence where people tend to act or conduct their behaviors based on if they're going to get a reward perhaps, and there's this temperament style persistence. And so also listed here are extreme variants of these, and again, usually there's like a continuum where people fall somewhere in between, but some people may be very high in some categories, some people may be very low. And these typically, this temperament styles are thought to not change much throughout one's life. Another thought about different temperament styles is like a depressive versus hyperthymic, or a depressive versus a little bit more active temperament style. And so this may be another term for this, could be similar to like introvert or extrovert, where there's sort of a continuum between them. But these things are mostly consistent throughout one's life. There may be some variability here and now and then. Maybe it can adapt a little bit, but people may have a tendency to act a certain way just because they were sort of born or constructed that way. So interestingly, there are found to be some biological changes in the brain and the body that can happen based on different temperamental styles. And here's a look at a diagram for some different stuff where people who avoid harm, that may be related to more GABA or serotonin, more neurotransmitters that are calming. People with novelty seeking relate more dopamine, which is like the reward or pleasure chemical. People dependent on rewards or social attachment, more norepinephrine, serotonin. And persistence is more of these other neurotransmitters as listed. So you can see there can be some maybe treatment for the different temperament styles. So I want to differentiate temperament now versus personality. And personality is a sort of pervasive pattern of behaviors that happens like over time. And then again, we see that some parts of one's personality can change, like the spiritual aspect, even a lot of the psychiatric aspect can change if they're suffering from a depression, anxiety, trauma disorder. But the temperaments are less likely to change. Although if someone is having these behaviors that are affecting their life, there can be different medication options that can address some of those neurotransmitters that may alter or change some of those behaviors so that they're more functional. Conversely, for the temperament style, there may also, some of those medications also work on those same neurotransmitters, so maybe those can be treated, although we don't typically treat medications to address temperament, but we do use medications and therapy to address personality and these pervasive patterns of behaviors. Look, I thought this was an interesting topic because growing up, a lot of times people say that people don't change, this or that, but we do see that in some aspects of life, people do change. Some aspects of life, people are less likely to change. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and like the video for more videos.